Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Peace Week and welcome to our plenary in this moment. We're so grateful that you're here. If you're watching this live stream and Peace Week is new to you, you can register to get an email every day that will tell you about the amazing happenings at Peace Week by going to peaceweek.org. It is my great honor this moment to introduce you to our panelists that are part of this plenary today. Our plenary is called Restorative Healing and Justice, Indigeneity and Kindness. And it has been just an absolute honor and a privilege to get to know these incredible humans who you're going to meet today as they tell this astonishing story of restorative justice and healing that happened in the New York, New Jersey area. Happened upon Turtle Island. And my name is Becky Suzik, and I'm one of the people behind the scenes of Peace Week. And I really want to just let you all know that the most important people are you that are coming and leaning in and opening your hearts and your sacred presence to receive these messages that we're bringing around peace and unity and what is possible, because peace is possible now. Peace is possible through each of us as we do this work of listening and opening our own hearts, our own thinking, our own actions, and leaning in and doing this work that we know is possible now. So without further ado, I want to introduce our panelists, and perhaps, I know Brother Ben, you are here as well. Perhaps you could help me with the spotlight as I share. We have some extraordinary people joining us today. And so first we have our beloved Chief Dwayne Perry of the Ramapo-Munsee Lunaape Nation. And he mentored under the Honorable Conrad Lynn, who was an internationally known civil rights attorney whom throughout his career had walked with Dr. King, John Lewis, and many others. Chief Perry helped to integrate the first barber shop in Suffern, New York. In 1966, when he and other friends were refused service for reasons no one understood. 1971, Chief Perry was instrumental in establishing Rockland Community College's first student organization for people of color. He later earned a bachelor's degree from Pace University and an MS in Community Economic Development from Southern New Hampshire University. Today, Chief Perry continues to champion human rights and has established the first Indigenous embassy of the Western Hemisphere. It's incredible. And we have, who's joining us in a recording, Oleana Whispering Dove. And Oleana is a museum administrator. She's been working in that capacity for over 15 years, creating Native American programs that spotlight traditional and contemporary Indigenous artists. Similarly, Oleana is Smithsonian Museum trained in Indigenous Lenape history, a natural progression following years at the Juilliard School of Music and the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Undeterred by social injustice during a global pandemic, Oleana accepted the opportunity as an associate producer of a short film titled Silent Tribute, produced by Rainey Film and Media, memorializing George Floyd and murdered missing Indigenous women on Native American reservations. As a Native American advocate, curator, and public speaker, Oleana's debut portrait as the Salgi water spider instates her legacy as part of the newly expanded Women of the Americas exhibition by artist and photographer Lisa Levart. Owl, Stephen Smith, is with us in our Zoom room. He is the son of William Alfred Smith, Esquire, who spent his early childhood in the Ramapo Mountains, and is grandson of Ira Smith, professor and educator from Hillburn, New York, given the middle name Dennison in honor of the Dennison family of the Ramapo Mountains. Steve Denison Smith received his Bachelor of Arts in Political Science from the University of California at Santa Cruz and his Doctorate of Jurisprudence from the University of California at Berkeley. Mr. Smith studied Mexican culture and history as a Pacific Rim scholar of the University of California, for which he wrote an essay of an Afro-Mestivo community on the Pacific coast of Mexico. Mr. Smith has traveled and lived extensively in Latin America and the Caribbean, including Mexico, Cuba, Haiti, Guyana, and Ecuador. We have Reverend Jack Zamboni, who is joining us in our room. He grew up in Sloatsburg and Suffern, New York, and was educated in Massachusetts, Connecticut, and attended the General Theological Seminary in New York City. He was ordained an Episcopal priest in 1983 and has served congregations in the Diocese of New Jersey for almost 40 years. He is currently the rector of St. Francis Church in Dunellen, New Jersey, and lives in nearby Somerset. He has participated in the anti-racism work of the diocese for a number of years and now serves on its reparations commission. Like his sister Helen, he enjoys bicycling, cooking, and music, including performing with area choral groups as a classically trained singer. Judy Cardenas is from Denver, Colorado, was born in New York City, New York. Judy has 36 years experience as a bilingual Spanish-English kindergarten teacher, currently teaching in Denver public schools. She's married and is a parent of 3 bicultural children. Judy leads her school's Black BIPOC Equity Initiative and Sustainability Student Green Team while advocating to immigrant justice and fighting deportations in her UU faith community. Judy and her twin sister, who will also be joining us, learned peace and rights activism from their mother's example. Judy has a Bachelor of Arts and bilingual teaching certification from UC Santa Cruz. Jan Ross, born in New York City and raised in Denver, Colorado. Jan is a pacifist and lifelong Unitarian. Her 30-year marketing and communications career began in Boston, radio, and MTV in New York in the 80s. She worked at Universal Pictures Hollywood, the Discovery Channel, Stars, Encore Media, and Mullen Advertising. When she became a mother, she resumed freelance writing and moved into the nonprofit world to serve in marketing and admissions leadership roles at Landmark School for Dyslexia in Massachusetts, St. Anne's Episcopal School in Middletown, Delaware, and currently at the Kalmar Nickel Foundation for the Tall Ship of Delaware in Wilmington. She's married and has a BA from Mount Holyoke College. And Helen Zamboni grew up in Sloatsburg and Suffern, New York. She is essentially retired from the practice of law in Rochester, New York, and now devotes many of her waking hours to long-distance bicycle riding, swimming, and volunteer activities. Helen is secretary and a member of the board of directors of the YMCA of Greater Rochester and chair of its human resources and endowment committees. She's also a founding board member and secretary of Finger Lakes Opera and serves on its executive and financial committees. In January of this year, she joined the board of trustees of the Avon Free Library, and in July 2022, rejoined the board of trustees of Jiva Theatre. I used to work for Jiva Theatre. I grew up in Rochester, so I'm hearing many groups that I'm resonating with. Rochester's producing regional theatre company after a hiatus of several years. Finally, Helen is a member of the Avon, New York Rotary Club. So we have distinguished, beautiful, compassionate, philanthropic, heart-led guests here. I'm really grateful for your presence. And we're here to tell this incredible story, this story of an event that happened, that there was a lot building up to an event that happened on July 4th, which I was so privileged and honored to be there at Ramapo College on June 4th, to witness, to be a sacred witness to a celebration and an honoring of a deed that was returned. And we have, I don't believe that Brooklyn is able to join us, but Brooklyn Demme is a documentarian and an incredible videographer. And he was there and he created a 2-minute piece that we're going to start our time together with, that really captures the essence of the story that we shall be sharing with you all today. So thank you all for joining us, and thank you for sharing the video.
The people there with Reverend Zamboni are literally the living descendants of the Sloat family. The Sloat family are who they named Sloatsburg after, but they were also the ones that bought the deed to what's called the Pothat tract.
This document has been in our family for multiple generations. It was on the wall of the home that Helen and I grew up in. Began to come to me while I was in the middle of doing anti-racism work in the Episcopal Diocese of New Jersey, where I serve as a priest. I began to think, this is where this needs to go. It needs to be returned to the people from whom it was taken.
We are just really delighted to have been able to do this. We're trying to make amends for a really old wrong.
I'm actually hoping if we can share the kindness we're sharing in the unity, I'm hoping it can be an example to the rest of the country. There's no reason we can't be standing together. And my thought is, I pray every day, kindness is the answer to somebody's prayer. Let's answer some prayers.
Amen.
Yeah, yes. Amen.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you so much to Brooklyn Demme for putting that piece together. And if you want to share that piece, we will be making that available. I'll put my email in the chat. You can email me, and we would love that story to be shared of any part of your work, everybody who's here in the Zoom room. And so I wonder, Brother Owl, if you would mind just opening us with a blessing as we begin this sacred sharing time, Brother Owl.
Anushik Kishalamokwang, Anushik Huachimanitu, Elamiliang, Kokana Ki, Walk Mbi, Walk, Kashung, Walk, Tindao, Anushik, 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 Anushik. The words I just expressed are from the Munsee language, the original language of Manhattan, of which Manhattan is a Munsee word meaning land of many hills. I just wanted to give a special thanks to my Munsee language teacher, Karen Sasha Moscow, who recently died about a week ago. She lives in Munsee, Delaware Nation in Ontario, and she's helping us to bring the language back. There's over 800 languages spoken in the New York metropolitan region, making it the most linguistically diverse region on the planet, but only recently has Munsee been brought back as an active language. And what I said in English was, Anushik Kishalamokwang, thank you from whose thoughts we arose. Anushik Huachimanitu, thank you, Great Spirit. Elamiliang, for giving us. Kakana Ki, our Mother Earth. Mbi, our waters. Kashung, wind. Tindao, fire. And thank you, all of you, for coming here and being part of this circle. Anushik.
Anushik. Thank you, Al. Well, some of our guests were not able to join us in the Zoom room, so we did a pre-record that we're going to share, and then we will all come back. Well, we hope you all stay with us. It's a really beautiful video, and so we'll turn it over to our guests in the recording, and then we will go deep and continue to share this extraordinary story. Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome, Oleana and Helen. I'm really grateful that we're going to have this time to have a conversation around an extraordinary event that we're talking about today that happened in June. And I'm just profoundly grateful for this opportunity to hear your heart, hear your personal narratives around what your experience was building up to the day that the deed was returned to Ramapo-Munsee Lunaape, and each of your involvements with this incredible story, this possibility that I feel is restorative healing and restorative justice, and beckons questions for me personally about how can I embody and make different choices in my life that may lead me to open my heart towards greater action, towards healing. So I'm really grateful for this conversation. And Oleana, you've been so involved and so supportive and such an incredible presence in the development and the unfolding of this story and through your work, and would love to invite you to share your perspective and what this has meant to you. Welcome.
Thank you so much for the invitation. I was going to defer to Helen, since she is part of the family with this incredible heart, this incredible unity of heart, and it's very heartfelt on our part to have been able to just even be a part of the planning for presenting this exchange. The planning itself was incredible. You're not aware on a day-to-day basis of what it is that's actually unfolding, but the importance and the significance of this actually happening was very much something that we were all aware of. And at the very onset, when Reverend Jack shared that it was on his heart to do this, and that from there, after marinating on it forever, however long he marinated, he shared it with his extended family. And they all came to the same conclusion that he had, which was to proceed with returning a land deed to the community, the surviving community, because not every community survived, right? So the timing, the connection, and the fact that there was a surviving community for him to make this return, that all had to line up at the same time. And since we're all spiritual people here, we understand that that was, we hate to use a cliche word, but it is the essence of a divine occasion, of a divine occurrence, when everything lines up at the right time, at the right place, with the right people. And so once the exchange happened, I have to say, being a witness to history is not something that we all ever get a chance to partake in. But being a historian and a museum professional myself, I was then, at that moment, very aware that I was living history. We became the Ramapo, the Zambonis, all of us became a part of history in that moment, June 4th, 2022. So all of those other dates prior, 1773 and prior to that, they all lined up to June 4th, 2022. And obviously I'm still elated. And I'm going to say, in regards to the land deed I think for me, one of the things that I feel important to convey is that there is a difference in cultural norms. One culture values paper, values sale, values ownership. Another culture does not, for any of the above, right? So the deed itself becomes a symbol. It just becomes a symbol because the original culture for which the deed was created had no value attached to the sale of it, the deed, the paper, and probably not even any understanding if there wasn't a language interpreter or a cultural interpreter at the time. So that deed today is a symbol of pretty much several hundreds of years of misunderstanding. That's my perspective as a historian and a Lenape preservationist. And I'm thankful that I was allowed to be a part of the exchange. And I'm even more thankful, and I'm gonna finish here, I'm even more thankful that we have one museum, at least one that I'm aware of, in the New York City area that now has an unbroken, positive relationship with the Lenape community. They have had this ongoing relationship where their history has been intact since 1654, and they have their landmark because of that particular 1654 treaty is called the Oak Tree Treaty of 1654 with Thomas Pell. But they've never shied away from their history. They've never hidden it. They have preserved it, and it's a part of the everyday language and the everyday tours that we do. So this allows us to add to the history database, because there's another little caveat to this. I thought I was going to end there, but I'm going to just add this caveat. The other reason being why it landed in the museum home that it is in now currently, until perhaps it finds a duplicate home somewhere, it's going to open the door. See, what has happened now will open the door for other people to see the value of what the Zambonis have already started. But the last caveat that I want to reference is that the Ramapo community has Bartow descendants that the Bartow Museum was looking for when I arrived at their museum 4 years ago. So the deed is now in a home, not just for the Ramapo because they're Lenape, but also because there are Bartow descendants within the Ramapo community. So there is a whole wealth of connections that occurred just by this one simple gesture. And I'm looking forward to other people, other organizations, other cultural centers, other educational centers to become more accepting of doing these acts of kindness, these acts of, it just makes sense to do it. Just do it. Just open your heart and understand the difference in cultures, and understand that, as Helen has said earlier, it can't be a land return if the land was never sold. And I'm gonna leave it for whoever wants to join us.
Thank you so much. Wow, incredible. And just the orchestration and the way you articulated the history, and now to be myself a witness to history, it totally extraordinary and possible. It's really so possible. Helen, I'd love to invite your reflection now.
Okay, well, this began really, my brother, whom Oleana referred to as Reverend Jack, he has had possession of the document since he and I separated a number of family items after my father's death and my stepmother breaking up the household. And so he and I decided who was going to take what of which. And he took that document and had it on the wall in his home, but it has bothered him for some time for the reasons that I think, all of us, and we're not, by the way, all Zambonis. My brother and I are Zambonis, and the Zamboni name is not the family who were from whom we are the Sloat descendants on our mother's side, as are Judy and Jan, my cousins, who are participants and have been involved in this. But the deed was in the possession of our respective grandparents, and then when their parents died, then it came to my mother by agreement between my mother and her sister, who is Judy and Jan's mother. In any event, so Jack had learned of a man who was involved in reparations matters for the diocese in New Jersey that he's involved with, and it was Derek who had the actual contact with the Ramapo tribe and the Ramapo Nation about then making the connection. And Jack asked me, I think it must have been either Thanksgiving or Christmas last year, since he made this connection, what about then, how about we make contact about returning the document to the Ramapo? And I was all in favor of it because, first of all, it should be with the Ramapo. It came from them, it belongs back to them, even though there's no land that's being, that was being transferred. We don't own any of the land. None of us does any longer. So it really was an act of restorative justice, a very simple and small thing that we could do, because, but important, but a small symbolic thing. So my brother made the contact, and we started having a lot of conversations that Oleana was very helpful in facilitating, starting back, I think, in March, and then worked our way to the point of actually having a ceremony for transferring the document in early June of this year. I've not been involved in much in the way of restorative type justice matters. I'm serving on the board of directors now of a theater company that is making acknowledgments of the land on which the theater building was constructed. It was an armory in the early 1900s, or yeah, the late 1800s. So I have obviously rubbed elbows with the concept, but I'm just very glad that we were all able to do this, and really gratified with how wonderfully we were received by the chief and by the other members of the Ramapo, all the way through the process. It's been wonderful, and that's pretty much what I have to add to this.
Wow, it's so extraordinary, and thank you for leaning in and for being part of this and for doing the right thing here, what can be done. And it's interesting to consider how a deed that was written so many years ago, how that being given back what that possibility might be to trigger in other people who are colonialized, of what it brings up in us. Like, how can we do something to actually make the land come back? You know, it's like it's a precursor to me. It's like, it's time. And so, Oleana, I wonder if you have a reflection on that notion.
I do. I actually do. This is a little personal because I have worked with some institutions who are less than receptive to Native programming. And I have worked with a whole lot more who have been very receptive to Native programming, and even just initiating something as simple as what has now become the thing to do, the first step in reconciliation, are land acknowledgements. And I'm very aware of a particular scenario where I would have been met with resistance prior to this land deed return. This land deed return allowed this group of people to witness. And when you witness someone else's sincerity, someone else's genuineness, a little bit of, it opens the door perhaps for you to have a shift. It may be a very small incremental shift, but I know for certain that this exchange allowed what would have been a fuller resistance on their part to something as simple as a land acknowledgement to become real, to be more accepting. And so for me, it's, yeah, on the one hand, it sucks that, you know, that someone else has to take the first step, but you have to be ever so grateful when someone else does, because then hopefully that does open the door for everyone else to have that same shift in heart and understanding, because the understanding, it begins when you recognize that prior to that shift, you're just working from the space of your cultural awareness. And your cultural awareness is what has been supplanted onto everyone else's. So the rest of us are just living lives through a culture that is not our own. It's an assimilation, right, of a culture that has become the dominant culture. I hope I didn't go too far off.
No,
so I'm gonna pause and see if that is more than enough.
Yeah, really powerful.
I can go on for an hour. I'm trying
to. No, it's really
hour
powerful.
And 30 minutes.
You know, referring to myself as being colonialized, I also want to refer to myself as going through a process of decolonialization. Especially, I came from England originally, and so I carry that heritage in me genetically and that awareness, and I also feel it as a responsibility of how do I, what's in me that I need to heal from in myself as a human being and come back into my own nature of possibility. And so hearing you share in that way, Oleana, I think of this word, when we witness other people's joy, there's this term called compersion that means joy for someone else's joy. And when I witnessed what happened on June 4th, I had so much joy. And I felt so much joy for the love, for the kindness, for the undoing of a transaction, that possibility, and just wish that at an exponential rate for for this time of healing that I think we're going through, the healing crisis of things that seem so upside down, and yet there's so many great possibilities in this moment. So I thank you so much for joining us and for articulating your story and what you've been able to be part of. And thank you for your sacred witness and your beautiful historianship, and for your sharing. Really appreciate you joining us today.
I'm gonna not close before I get to say this. The beauty is, at least for me, the moment that Helen and Jack and her family were, in exchange for the land deed, were given a gift by the Ramapo.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to be at such a high level of accepting to understand that what you received in exchange for that land deed was the beauty of that whole day, right?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
I to share, beyond that, but yes, you received something from the Ramapo, and then that was like, when I saw that, I was like, that's so awesome. Now your family's history changes when for your grandchildren. They're gonna, now instead of the land deed on the wall, they're gonna say, hey, how did we get that canoe?
Right.
I'm gonna hop off.
Right. And Judy, I can see, has her necklace there with the turtle.
Sorry, I'm gonna turn my phone off because it's giving a.
I'll jump in for a minute as the twin sister of Judy, who just left. So Helen explained, we're Sloats, and it was our grandmother's family that was related to the Sloats, who eventually owned the paper, the deed. Our family no longer owns any of the land, but the experience was extremely humbling and hugely eye-opening for me. I never realized just how massive a problem this was and how impactful one kind deed would be, because we all knew about this paper, this deed. It was always, because it was our family name, the town of Sloatsburg, or Sloats. My mother was always proud of it and didn't know any better. So it's been very humbling. And Chief Mahwah Perry, I have a quote from you saying we should unify history around truth. And that's what this is. You are far more articulate than you give yourself credit for being. But yeah, the idea that we need to recognize the truth, speak the truth, and try to create a peaceful and loving environment around that is really what this was all about. Please jump in. You need to unmute yourself, I think.
Well, first of all, thanks for saying you're a twin, because I was thinking perhaps there was something wrong with me. I didn't want to really discuss it right now. But yeah, I do think that beyond even our immediate need, and Oleana sort of alluded to it, the overall impact is that it has led the way for a better humanity. I don't think anybody really, perhaps if we're out west somewhere, but I don't think anybody expects any return of property in metropolitan New York. That's going a step too far, I think. But what it has done, it has shown the greatness of a people and the humanity of a people that we need to return to who we are. All of us, not, and I think it took a tremendous amount of courage for your family to step forward. Because beyond the words, it also verifies not other parts of the Ramapo history, which really has to do with the creation of America. And if you think about the long history of degradation that the tribal people have suffered, and suddenly somebody brings it, if I'd have presented that same deed without your family, would have had no gravitas whatsoever. If somebody would have made like I wrote it somehow in 1737 and brought it forward. But because you had the courage and the dignity to come forward and bring it, it changed the entire, it will ultimately change the entire history of the nation. And for that, I think I think America should be really beholden in some sense to your family. It took a tremendous amount of courage. I think we all like the father of the country, George Washington. Can you imagine when the truth about George Washington arises and there's nobody to stick a finger at but yourself? It's sort of like the other end of, I know it wasn't the intentions, but I'm saying the blowback is going to be just like the other end of with Columbus. I always thought he ought to have a statue if you could ride that little boat across the ocean. I had no idea that he was what his personality was until the Pope put it out. And of course, the document, the deed, has nothing to do with George Washington per se, but it does point out what we've been saying. George Washington was basically an employee when he got here. Without the help of our ancestors, there'd be no country.
Right.
I think without saying a word, the deed, that document itself, verifies everything we've been trying to say and been sort of ridiculed about for a number of hundred years. So I think there's a truth and freedom and freedom and truth. And I would hope, as I said, that this is one small, but in a way, gigantic step towards freeing the whole nation. I don't know what else to say beside that, but thank you on behalf of myself and the tribal people, but also I think thank you on behalf of what we're now calling America. We are teetering with our own democracy, and reality and truth is really the strongest points that we have to preserve it in all senses. So again, I'd like to just thank all you guys, and I think that's pretty well what I have to say. I'd like to hear some of your response to that.
Well, I guess I'd have to say that I'm very grateful for your expression of gratefulness, thankfulness, because to be honest, it's us who are thankful for having been so graciously received.
Yeah.
Because it might not have been, it might have been quite different to that. And it was a lovely day. The whole process, the relationship since we started meeting has been really very welcoming, and I'm personally very grateful because I had no idea until we first met that there wasn't going to be any hostility coming from an understandable hostility, frankly, coming from the Ramapo, from you, Chief Perry, from Owl, from Oleana, from everyone we interacted with. And once we had our first meeting, it was very clear that this was going to be a very mutually beneficial relationship and a process to get to the point where we delivered the deed to you. So I personally am very grateful for the reception we had and the continuing relationship. So
I'd like to push that a couple of floors up to Mahwah, because all of this was from our viewpoint of what was sitting on our walls for so many years and walking by and going in and out of the kitchen and the bathroom was a giant historical, I can't even call it a mistake. It was a misdeed. It was human unkindness. And so that even that we got thank you and then we got gifts it was more than we could have absolutely expected. You know, we, like exactly what Helen said, there has to be layers of hurt and anger and sadness and desperation and history that this document, this paper represents. And so when you say it's a symbol, and thank you for returning the symbol, I wanted to respond to Oleana. I don't know if she can still hear me, but even the last meeting we had just before I came out from Denver, Colorado to meet with you all, so hi from the Rocky Mountains. This was transforming for me because it was, like we said, it was a picture frame and not a lot of understanding. Our mother was very proud of our Dutch ancestry, and all of a sudden the truth was out there on the table, and the misdeeds and what was done wrong was now, it's our name and it's our descendants. And so being accepted the way we were with you, I was on Zooms driving to my kindergarten classroom, and I got out of my car and I was like transported to another space and time in history. And I went into my school and who are we? Like what happened? And just knowing that we could just talk about it. And like you said, that was so powerful what you just explained. It's like if it was just like, oh, somebody found this frame and here you go, it's yours, but that we were people and present and we did this as a piece of humanity does make me understand now the historic significance. And then when we all met face to face, and it was so much thankfulness and gratefulness and outpouring, and then I got a gift. I was like, thank you. We're acknowledging past, like I said, I can't even use the word mistakes, bad deeds, right? And so you have transformed us, and I love and hope as a spiritual person, as a human being, seeing you face to face, that our families and future families can find the things and the errors and the words and the physical and concrete things that have happened, and start acknowledging them, even if they can't fix it and they can't give you the tract of land. Is just simply acknowledge that we're still people and we can have these conversations. So thank you, Becky, to giving us a chance to talk about it. World Peace Day is, the most important thing is that people can talk to each other. Again, I'm a kindergarten teacher. That's what we do all day long. Something bad happened, and so talk about it. And so your words and then our physical presence as people has changed this symbol into, like I said, an experience, and now a recorded possibility, hopefully possibilities for more people. So thank you for transforming us. And like I said, the acceptance and the love was just layers and layers above what any of us feel like we were even deserving. I mean, completely unexpected. Can I say that? It was like, we didn't really know that you wanted to talk to us, and we didn't really know that there would be a beautiful, loving moment, and now we're still living this. We're still trying to figure out. I'm trying to share this with my education community and share it with my union brothers and sisters. And one person can do so many things, but if we can keep the ripple in this pond going, that's the hope of Peace Day and just the exchange we had. So I don't know, I'm just completely humbled was the word my twin sister down there used, and still humbled, and I'm tearing. That's where I am.
Yeah.
Also, thank you.
Let's get a little water.
Yes, more water because it's leaking.
Wow, Judy, thank you. Jen, thank you. Helen.
We talked about all the significance of this, and I expect to be there live on Tuesday, but something that we all co-wrote in our press release, and something that I don't think we've actually said today, is that we also know, besides being humble and grateful and everyone's thanking everyone and it's all about peace and goodness, we cannot cure the atrocities that happened. And as my sister said, we do have to be able to speak about them. And I actually, well, I actually have a family member who, when he saw what we wrote, said, when were the, he was thinking of events like massacres or, big events. And what Chief Perry has explained to me, and I understood after talking with him for a while on the phone, that it's what he calls quiet genocide. So it was genocide, it was land theft, it was slavery, it was brutality. There were so many things that happened that were never documented, that we will never know all the atrocities, but we know they're real and we know they happened. And to my sister's point, that's one of the main things that this document that we returned actually unfortunately does represent, is that, land theft and all the brutality that went into it, and then generations following that of racism and maltreatment in terms of who gets hired, who gets educated, of any kind of social or cultural support. This has been an epic, multi-generational issue that has never gone away. And so all we're really trying to do at this point is turn the tide the other direction, which is not easy to do. But my sister and I, when we gave our prayer at the ceremony, one of the things we said is that we recognize the generations of land theft and loss this document represents, and that our real desires for healing and survival of the nation, and that we hope this is a new path to disrupt and dismantle oppressive supremacy. So there we are.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Wow. Chief Perry.
Hello.
Mm.
Yeah, like I said, it's perhaps the first time that it's monumental to the point where it certainly dwarfs any statue we have running around the country, but it's also extremely subliminal. We've spent our entire history trying to hide the history.
Yeah.
We've invented history. We've invented more than anyone can imagine, and suddenly it's like, oh, excuse me, I found the batteries to the flashlight. And I think it's gonna. I don't think the overall effect has really been felt, really been seen yet. So as we go forward with this broadcast and other things, and talking with a number of other people, it's going to literally change the complexion of how this country proceeds forward. One of the things that I am proud of and try to go with in terms of being basically some of the very first people that were, you may say, colonizers in a kindly manner, is that we share kindness and to act with kindness. Because we have been set upon does not mean that others need to act in a negative manner. And I think kindness is what your family has shown, and kindness in effect is the answer to other people's prayers. And it's no more than picking up maybe a pencil for somebody that can't quite bend over. But this has been a giant kindness and a heroic effort for the whole country. Somehow we do need to allow the whole country to understand history has shifted into reality. And like I said, it took some bravery here to do that. I'm a bit old by it, I know, and I keep repeating myself, but that is the gist of it. And if we can sort of take this lesson and share it, and we're trying, I know Becky's been doing marvelous work all over the place here with Peace Week and all out. We need to get this message of integrity out globally so that people understand that is the armor that we all need to be wearing. integrity and kindness. Not look at me, I got $3, no brain. The lack of humanity is what brought us to this state globally right now. And so you're right, it's a daunting task, but I do believe we can start to turn it around, not for those who have been abused, but for all of us. If we're going to have a better world, all of us need to be a better person, better people. And I'd like to hope that it starts with this moment here.
Thank you so much, Chief Perry. We have an opportunity to become humankind.
Exactly.
So powerful. And I see the owl is here and may be able to share. Hello, Owl. Can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now. You're invited to bring your voice into our circle here, Owl, and share your reflection. Hello.
Sure, I'll just be brief. I don't know if I can be as eloquent as Oleana and Chief Perry, so I won't even try. So I'm just coming to you here from Brooklyn, and I'll just give you a picture of Manhattan here in the 21st century. You can see the the Chrysler Building there in the distance, and Empire State. And just when people were talking, I was reflecting on the fact that our world has changed quite dramatically in the almost 3 centuries since the deed was signed, and when it's come to us. But it's important that we maintain these connections to our past so that we can understand our present and where we're going into the future. Or otherwise, we're at the risk of forgetting what's not only what's valuable, but just maybe even losing our very lives here. I mean, I was just here in New York for an action regarding climate change, and people who kind of realize that if we continue on the path we're on, then we may not have a 7th generation. There may not be another generation in 300 years. So that's the action I was on today, and I was here in Brooklyn, and remarking on the fact that one of the failures, I'll just say, of humanity, because we're human beings, is that when Columbus came here, we could drink from many of these rivers, and now that's simply not the case anymore. And I came across this this morning.
Wow.
It's not good when we're told we cannot eat the fish and the animals from the river here because it's become so polluted. And that's a statement in itself. But the land deed, it's just more powerful than perhaps we even really quite realize. I mean, it's also about information. It's about history, and it's about connection. And perhaps that's what some of our, I'll be optimistic, since this is Unity Earth and Peace Week and we're trying to be peaceful. I'm going to call them my future friends. That perhaps our future friends will realize that we are, I mean, more than indigenous. We're human beings, and that we all are interconnected and really need to respect each other. We may have differences, but we need to approach these differences in a respectful way. And that's not what I'm getting from some of the folks that are challenging us. I mean, we've had African people that have married into our community. My line in particular, we've had Europeans as well. But Chief Perry teaches us, that we're Ramapo. Even before that, I mean, there were other nations that we have intermarried with, traded with. So the idea that we're these kind of separate entirely separate communities developing on our own without any interaction with anyone else. That's just not reality. And I think that's the kind of thinking that has led us to a point where, we don't really respect the waters. And, we have a situation where we say, this is my land and only mine. And, you can't come here. And the fact of the matter is that, we're all children of this earth, and, we need to kind of respect it. I mean, I was coming down the river, I think they said it was Kamala Harris, her plane, this like futuristic looking plane came down, or maybe it was one of the presidential helicopters. And I think there's something going on at the UN Climate Week here. And yeah, I mean, this is a very different area than it once was, but we're still connected to these waterways. And I think sometimes with all this technology, and all that we see right here, it's easy to forget that these lands are built on these waters right here, built on this land here, and with the air. So that's all I had to say, and just thank you for the opportunity to express myself. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Al.
As we were saying, Munsee, Anushik, thank you. Anushik, Kisha Lamokwang, Anushik Kwachi Manitou, Elamiliang, Kakana Ki, MD, Kashung Tindao. Thank you, Great Spirit. Thank you, Creators from Thought, for giving us our Mother Earth, waters, air, and fire. So thank you.
Thank you, Anushik.
Thank you.
Thank you, each of you, for your beautiful hearts, your truth, sharing this beautiful wisdom in this time together. Deep gratitude and deep bows. Thank you so much.
Anushi.
Yo.
Wow. Wow. Deep gratitude for our guests. And it's so extraordinary. And I'm so grateful that Reverend Jack and Chief Perry and Jan are with us to continue this conversation. And as we have not yet heard from Reverend Jack, I would love to invite you to share your heart and reflections on what happened and what you just heard. Thank you for being with us, Reverend Jack.
I'm very glad to be here, and I'm very sorry I couldn't join you all on Saturday. First, just as I mentioned in the chat, there was this conversation about the gifts that the Ramapo gave us. I'm wearing the necklace I was given, and here is the canoe that was given to us. And
can you back it up a little bit? Can you back it up a little bit closer to you? Then we can. There we go. Yeah, I actually have a photograph of it I can share as well too. So
yeah, it might. Maybe that.
There you go. Beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah. And interestingly, Helen and I have a family summer home in the Adirondacks that our parents bought years and years ago, and we had said, "Oh, we should take this up there," and I forgot to do that, which means it's here in my house in New Jersey, and I could share it with you today. So I'm glad for that forgetting. Two things that struck me listening to that wonderful conversation from Saturday. One of which was when Chief Perry, you said that if our family hadn't been involved in returning the deed to you, that no one would have taken this seriously. And what that made me realize again was in a sense, the persistence of the power imbalance between those of us who are descendants of European colonists and the Native community. The fact that we, as a European descended family, are what we do is given more seriousness by the wider culture than what you do. And it shouldn't be that way, but it is, and it has been for centuries, and it still is. It shouldn't be the case that that the work of a European descended family is what makes this real or important. But that seems to still be the reality of the world that we live in. And that connected for me as well with Becky, with what you said about sort of the internal decolonization that we who are descendants of European colonists need to do, and I feel like I am in the very, very early stages of trying to do that in my own life, and I'm preparing to retire from my parish work as an Episcopal priest in January, and trying to look towards what the next chapter of my life will be, and how that will be part of that next chapter of my life is a question that I don't have an answer to yet, but a question that I think it's essential for me to try to explore and to live into more deeply. And I just want to echo what Helen and Judy and Jan said in the video about their gratitude, my gratitude for the graciousness with which we, as our family, were received by Chief Perry and the Ramapo. When, as Helen said, Derek Minnow Bloom, who first connected me with Chief Perry, sent a sort of introductory email, and so I then emailed Chief Perry and sort of told him the background of the deed in my family, and that I wanted to be in conversation with him and his community about this. And I really did not know. I'd been aware of the Ramapo at that point for several years, but was just felt I did not want to reach out without someone with some connection to help me with that, because I wasn't sure how to do that appropriately, and how to and what kind of reception I might receive. As Helen said, there were it had occurred to me that the Ramapo might want to take the deed and burn it for what it represented, and if that's what they wanted, I would have been happy to let that happen. But we were met with such graciousness, and I'm just so grateful for that, and for this opportunity to continue to build on that relationship in this space.
Thank you so much, Reverend Jack. Really powerful reflections, and just deep gratitude for your heart and for your this question that I posit to all of us that I'm going to put into the chat is contemplating, what does personal accountability and responsibility in restorative healing and justice look like for us as individuals? And you really exemplify that, in your leaning in and being open to what you don't know, and to offer this beautiful gift of kindness and restorative healing and justice. So I'm really grateful for how you are leading us in your incredible example. And Chief Perry, would love to invite your voice now, brother, to add to this beautiful conversation. We can unmute you. There we go.
Yeah. Thank you. I think really the essence of what has happened and what I've heard from Sloat family and from the Oleana and a number of other people is simply that without unity and humanity and respect for each other, and to also understand your current place in this society and then act upon it in a good way, all the rest is for naught. All the rest is window dressing. It doesn't matter the size of your house, the size of your bank account. If you come out and you're angry and you have a need to be superior to someone that's barely surviving, you need more than a mirror. You need help. But I think what has been shown is, and it was mentioned, initially without the kindness and the integrity of allies, there would be no acknowledgement of brown people, no acknowledgement of the tribal people. I don't want to go into a negative, but here we have been suffering from quiet genocide from the day that the country had been invaded. What am I saying about that? I'm saying up until this moment, education has been manipulated, finances have been manipulated, the educational system has been manipulated. And all of this, and when I'm saying manipulated, I'm saying directly manipulated in terms of keeping the Ramapo down and out of and off of their own homeland. The entire process has been designed to regain what property now is left in the hands of the Ramapos. So in a very real sense, we are still in the middle of a land grab. We are still in the middle of denial of proper education, denial of access to funds, and a number of other things. And why is that? It's simply because of where we are located. If it were not for the descendants of the Sloats to step forward and with the humanity that they have shown and the courage they have shown, I believe this onslaught will continue, and it is continuing. The difference is we now have historical documentation to say, look, enough is enough. Let's wake up. Let's be who we are as human beings, and let's get real. Right now, we've actually had people have never even been in this area claiming to be from here. We've got other people, developers and politicians manipulating zoning. We've gotten second-rate education. All of that now will finally be addressed, I think, for a final time. Why am I saying a final time? They've all been addressed 100 times before me and with me. And without our allies standing for the truth, I'm sure it would go on until there is no more Ramapo left. We are literally suffering quiet genocide. And for the first time in my lifetime, we have seen a candle of hope that this will come to an end and that our children can not only thrive, but many of our people can return home. So all that to say, what am I saying here besides being thankful? I'm saying to each and every one of us, let us take a moment to reflect and to become simply to learn to be who we are in essence. We are not things, we are not cultures. If we are to survive the earth, then we need to understand that we are all part of the earth. At some point in antiquity, we were all children of the earth, all of us. Some of us have thrived in different ways. Let us celebrate that splendor. But to use that accomplishment or degradation as a way to put humanity into its place is beyond cruel and ugly. I would even use the big E word. Essentially, it's evil. So I don't mean to bring this down. This is a celebration of life. I'm saying thank you to the Sloats. Thank you to the descendants and the people that are still thriving in the Ramapos, that we are here to witness a rebirth of humanity. Because once all of us can go beyond who we are psychologically, if we can step back and realize who we are before time, we are all truly indigenous. We're all united. The earth needs to survive and needs each and every one of us, from the north to the south to the east and the west. It is now time to be the humans in humanity. So I plead with each and every one of you to please take the lead that the Sloats have given all of us. And the Creator has allowed us to survive long enough for the Sloats to come forward. Let us now share in humanity and go forward as one people and one time. And I thank you, and I apologize if I sound a little negative, but it's all about being very, very hopeful. I thank you guys, all of you. And Becky and Ben and everyone with Unity Earth also, thank you. And our 99 days of peace.
It is. It just, thank you so much, Chief Perry. And dear Jan, invite your voice to reflect, and we'll have time. I think we'll have time for one more share. And I do actually have photos. Can I just share these photos really quickly so we can see here? Oh, hang on. From the day. Incredible. And let me, hang on. I'm trying to move the images around here so I can, hang on, Snoopy. There we go. And we had such an incredible, here's the land deed itself. And some, just wanted to show those photographs. Jan, can unmute yourself. Oh, there you go.
Hi. Meeting Mahwah Perry has been one of the great honors of my life. Meeting everyone who was at the ceremony was overwhelming. Our family met up. It was in a Saturday morning. I drove a few hours from Delaware. We met up for bagels, but when we got there, the first thing we did was we're welcomed with a tobacco ceremony and holy blessings, and then went inside the auditorium with everybody else to do the ceremony and the drums and everything. So we never realize what small acts of kindness can do for others until we've done them. And we know this was not a small act historically, but in terms of literally handing a framed document to other people, that act was the small act. The bigger act was my cousin, Reverend Jack, realizing it was time to do this, making the contacts, talking to everyone. I'm getting weepy now. I've always wanted world peace. My mother always wanted world peace. I've always wanted people to be nicer to each other, and the golden rule, treat everyone as you'd like to be treated. But we haven't done that in history, and there's so much work to be done. But we're grateful that everyone who's listened in today has. And I think that the chief is right. We need to try to get this word out more, because this is a story that's worth telling and repeating, and hoping that other people will do the same. So that's very humbling, but thank you.
Reverend Jack.
I'm grateful again for Chief Perry's wisdom, because something you just said resonated with me and will stay with me, which when you said that you're looking at the reality of the world as it is, with the reality of the problems and the evils that you named, but saying that each of us must look at ourselves as human beings and look at where we are in our place in the structure of society, and then to work from that place, to do the work that we can each do from that place. So that gives me some guidance to look from the place where I am, the privileged place that I am in this society, and ask the question, what can I do more in the way of acts of restorative justice, from the privileged place that in which, into which I was born through, no merit of my own. It's just sort of, the luck of genetics, but it's where I am and what I've always been raised in. And the deed hanging on the wall was a significant piece of that in my family history. So I'm glad we could do what we've done. I know there's much, much more work that needs to be done, and I'm praying and looking to discern what my piece in that is.
Powerful. I recognize that Owl is on the phone with us too, and so Owl, if you're able to unmute, we would love to invite your voice, brother. We'll see if he's able to unmute. I believe he's driving, but we want to keep you safe. And we have a few minutes left. Brother Owl, if you can hear me, there you are.
Yes, can you hear me?
We can hear you. Go ahead.
Yes. I'm not sure how much I have to add to what's been said already. Everyone has spoken so eloquently and deeply. I would just add that in addition to a quiet genocide, we're also experiencing quiet ecocide. We're living through I think the 6th mass biological extinction event. And it doesn't seem to be as dramatic as the last one where you had an asteroid hitting the Earth and knocking out all the dinosaurs. But it kind of reminds me of what was said about history there, or even in the South. In the southern United States, it was said that in the South, the history isn't forgotten, or the past isn't forgotten. It's not even past. I think Mexico, has even takes that even to more profound depths if you study Mexican history. But even recently, we have a major ecocide genocide problem in one of our ancestral villages, Ringwood. And Chief Perry talks at length about how Ringwood provided the iron ore and actually the iron weapons for the American revolutionaries. The chain across the Hudson that prevented the British ships came from iron ore from our Ramapo Mountains. Our ancestors helped, guide the armies, the American armies through the mountains there. And Chief Perry says that without the participation of our ancestors, it's doubtful whether the American revolutionaries would have succeeded in establishing, I suppose, one of the first modern constitutional republics in this era. The original one being the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, better known as the Iroquois Confederacy. But why I say a quiet ecocide is that, and this comes down to racism. I mean, people don't necessarily acknowledge the deep racism of Henry Ford. I mean, he got an award from Hitler, who was very in tune with the eugenics movement, and one of the first groups targeted for the eugenics movement in the early 20th century were our ancestors, Ramapo ancestors. I mean, they wrote books about us. So I'm just talking about an event that happened just recently where Ford had the biggest auto plant, I think, from 1959 to 1979. They dumped untold amounts of toxic waste in the Ringwood mines and the lands where we were living when we wouldn't sell them our land. And a lot of people have gotten sick and died because of that. What was interesting the last couple of years was they had a very powerful investigative journalistic piece called Toxic Legacy. And that showed the people, not just the negative parts, but, how we were surviving, how we were dealing with this issue. One day it was like, and universities were using it, but one day it was wiped from the internet. And then we found out that they didn't want to clean up the area. They just wanted to cover it up literally. So I think we need to take away I'll just finish here saying that from what Chief Perry said is that, we're making history here, and part of history is remembering the past so that we can do better in the future. Thank you. On the sheet.
Becky, may I make a comment?
Of course, please.
This is in terms of restorative justice, and it's something that sort of came up through the whole conversation. everyone's currently concerned, and not only restorative justice, but truth and history. There's a simple solution to what's going on with our relatives, all of our relatives in the Southland. Number one, there would be no immigration into America. They're not immigrating, they're fleeing. They're fleeing from narco states. The truth in history needs to be simple, and we can solve it. We set up the narco states. We, the United States of America, set up the narco states in the early 80s. I'll leave all the big time politicians to figure out how. It's a real easy solution. Let us develop a Marshall Plan to restore dignity and democracy in South America. Let's stop looking at immigrants and blaming it on those who are most set upon. They're just basically fleeing Ramapos from their homeland. They're fleeing narco-terrorism. It's well known by everybody here and all throughout South America. So let us just get together as human beings, stop the lying, go for the truth, and start to simply restore, use the Marshall Plan on South America. So I'd just like to offer that. And maybe with the outreach that you have, someone might hear this that says, oh my goodness, the truth works, restorative justice has come. And thank you.
Anashik. I just invite us all to take a deep breath as we hold these powerful, beautiful, deep truths and stories of our brothers and sisters, as we hold what is possible through our hearts, through our hands, as we hold the complexity of the pain and the suffering and the possibility for the healing. And breathing together. This is a real life that we are all living. This is a real opportunity we each have. And it is not without pain and sadness. And it is not without us exploring the shadows of our own hearts and our own actions and our own lack of understanding and compassion for the history. So I'm so deeply grateful for the stories that we have heard today, for the possibility of each of us. And as we close, I just want to share that when we gathered on June 4th, that beautiful day at Ramapo College, the seventh generation were there, the children were there. And the gifts that were passed, they witnessed this, these young people. They saw a different story. And there was an elder there who said that he never thought that he would feel joy for the possible history of the possible future of his history. And he spoke that. And then to see the youth, the seventh generation, be there to see what is possible through kindness. So I just honor our youth. I honor the seventh generation and the significance of that among all of us, that we have our seventh generation here. And so thank you all again to our incredible guests for blessing us with your truths, your hearts, your stories, and for Peace Week and what we're doing here through the plenaries and reaching out and sharing these stories. Thank you to everybody for joining us and for opening your hearts. Blessed be, Anashik, 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 Anashik.
Becky, thank you so much for making this happen.
Yes, thank you.
Absolute honor, absolute honor. And so we can end the live stream, Ben.